Hi, everybody. This is a lesson about outlining organization and transitions. I know we've already covered that over the last couple of weeks, but this is just picking up some of the pieces we haven't gotten to. This is being recorded on March 23rd. We did not accomplish that in our Tuesday class this week because of internet problems. So my goal today with this video is to cover those pieces organizationally that we have not touched on yet. And then I will give instruction in a separate video with other details, but I'll be linking all of this in Canvas, and you'll obviously have found it because that's where you'll find this video. So to go through a couple of the things that we have not hit yet in this outlining and organizing video or PowerPoint, I'm going to be bouncing around a little bit. So first of all, I want to hit, we left off talking about outlining last time, but we didn't talk about organization. So we want to make sure that we're considering how we organize our information. Now, I know that you guys are working on your group speeches. So this would take the form of basically whose speech goes first, whose goes second, and whose goes third, and how do we decide what's the most logical order or flow of information. And then individually, you're going to be doing that in your own speeches as well. What is the most important? Or what is the first? However you decide to organize your information, you're going to be considering that as well. So we have here a look at 9 of the most common types of speech organization. I'm going to narrow it down even further for you. I'm going to talk about the 3 basic patterns of organization. And this is probably going to sound a lot like your English classes when you were talking about different ways to organize the information you present in an essay. So strangely, I have topical here. Actually, I'm going to jump topical here for a second. I'm going to jump over to chronological. So chronological or time order is one of the most common, one of the most easily identifiable ways to organize information. So this is used if you are talking about historical events, as this example has here. Where we can look at the flow of events, but we can also use it if we're talking about a procedure. First, select your recipe. Second, you collect your ingredients. Third, you start baking your cake. So chronological will deal with order, either of a historical event or of a process. So that's pretty easy to identify. The next one that's pretty easy to identify is spatial organization, or something's order in space. So this can be, many different ways to refer to space. Now I have in this example on the screen, literally space. So we have talking about the different layers of the atmosphere. So we're talking about something's order in space from closest to the Earth to furthest from the Earth. So we are radiating out of the out of Earth based on this format. But spatial can be done in reference to many other things as well. It can be done from inside to out, outside to in, left to right, top to bottom, north to south, east to west. So we can look at space in all different dimensions, not just the obvious top to bottom. So that is also a pretty easily identifiable organizational pattern. So I'm going to go back up to the one that I skipped here, which is topical. So in a way, you can group basically anything else, any other type of organizational pattern into, into topical order, which is basically you're ordering it by topic. Now, yes, certainly you can just randomly, pick one topic and move to the other if they're all pretty fairly equal. For example, here on the screen, you have wind power, solar power, geothermal power. Um, yeah, maybe you could talk about this spatially, but it would just make sense to, just lump these things together, one topic at a time. Generally speaking, you're going to want to think about keeping your most important information towards the end part of your speech, or this is applicable to essay writing as well. So you're going to want to save the best for last. Yes, you can do, hit with a most important topic first and then kind of go less important. There's no law against it, but it's just generally not as effective. We want to hear the most impactful thing at the end. So that would be topical. So topical, chronological, and spatial. And then I have a few specialized outline styles that we're going to talk about. So causal is cause and effect. So this example here, we're looking at different causes of suicide. So cause and effect, yes, can be a chronological because one thing happens, which causes another thing. So there is an inherent chronology to it. But as you can see in this example, it would be more closer to topical because we are just looking at different causes of suicide and whether those are placed, whatever order they're placed in may not be relevant. So that is one of these specialized. Problem solution is one that we're going to talk about more when we get into the persuasive speech unit at the end of the semester. So this is a very specific pattern where we identify a problem and we also identify a solution. As an outgrowth of problem solution, there is a very specific organizational pattern, and it's called Monroe's motivated sequence. I am not going to get into this at all right now because your persuasive speech, spoiler alert, will be following this exact pattern. So we're going to leave it alone, but I just want you to be aware that it's out there. We also have narrative. Many of your introductory speeches followed the narrative pattern because we went from a chronological order of events, usually because that's the way we tell stories. So narrative is a storytelling sort of pattern. So again, another version of chronological. All right, now, so that covers our types of organization. So when we're building our outline together, we are going to consider what order is our information going in. Sometimes this is just obvious, but I don't want to leave it as a given because you do need to put some effort and thought into it. All right, so I am moving back up. I know I'm bouncing around this PowerPoint a little bit, but you'll be okay. You have access to this PowerPoint in Canvas. This is just another quick. Sorry, I am recording this late at night and I am, my yawning is in effect here. So this page is a look at some of those organizational patterns we just talked about. We've been talking about using research to develop your material. Obviously, that's what the body of your speech is going to be all about. You're going to be doing research and using that to support your points. So continue working on that. Where we left things off in class today was you were really getting a narrowed down and further understanding of your individual portions of your speech. And I think after I met with each group, things sounded like they were heading in a much clearer direction, at least as far as I could see. So you should all be going out and beginning your research. Remember, you do need to have two sources that you're citing in your speech. So you need to have two different sources that you've consulted. You may certainly have more. And also you need to use at least two verbal citations. All right. Now, this is a big piece of things, of the whole outline structure, the whole speech giving structure, and that is transitions. Transitions, I have said this before, but I'm going to say it again. Um, Transitions are so, so important in speech because they tell your listener where you are going, because usually they cannot see your speech unless you have given them an outline. So generally, this is all they have to go on, and this is the only way they know they're moving from one point to another. They don't have a literal paragraph on a page to tell them or signify to them that they are going into a new idea. So these transitions are so important for audience understanding. Connectives is simply another term for transitions. They can be used interchangeably. Um, and transitions and connectives, they can be anything that from a single word to an entire sentence that ties parts of the speech together. That is what a transition or a connective does. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. We know probably about if you're using a chronological pattern like we just talked about, you can use numbered transition. You can say, in the example here, the first reason you should vote for me is blah, blah, blah. The second reason, the final reason. So certainly numbered transitions, that's a really easy way to identify where we are in a speech. We're going to talk about some of these other types of transitions here on the next slide, but I also want to make you aware that you can use it, because this is a speech. You can use nonverbal behavior to either in place of a transition, or better yet, in addition to a transition. So you can help reinforce that we are moving on to another portion by changing your position, whether it's taking a sip of water, simply pausing. I've seen many speakers do this very effective thing where they literally set up their speaking room in three portions. So imagine I'm physically moving around a space. Maybe the first part of their speech, the first body part is over here. Then when they transition into the second portion of the speech, they move to the center of the room. And then when they move to the third portion of the speech, they move to the other side of the room. So that can definitely reinforce for your audience, and certainly is helpful. Okay, so here are your types of transitions. We can do full sentences, and I'm going to give you some examples as we go, but you can also do signposts. So signpost is a word that refers to these simple single word transitions. Sometimes they might be a phrase, but only in the case of like, however, sorry, that's not two words. On the other hand, so that's a very specific phrase that we use for transitions. But we might use first, next, moving on. You can also use conjunctions, not to get too grammar-y here for you, but you can use conjunctions like because, and, so, since, after. Those sorts of words are all perfectly fine signposts. You can also use a rhetorical question to get your audience thinking about the next piece. You prompt them to think without a reply about the next thing that you're going to talk about. Or you can use that rhetorical question to prompt them to think about a topic you have just covered, as a way to signify that that topic is wrapping up and you're moving on to the next topic. So once we get to these full sentence transitions, and we may not be accustomed to thinking about these as much as we're okay with signposts, because again, these full sentence transitions are something that you will see further in longer form writing, maybe not the shorter essays and term papers you've been working on. And of course, again, in speaking situations. So you might see previews and summaries and something called a restate forecast. So a preview statement is something we talked about last time. That's what appears in your introduction that prepares your reader for the different portions of the speech. First, I'm going to talk about this, then I'm going to describe this other thing, and then finally we're going to talk about this. So at the end of your introduction, you are setting the roadmap for the speech. Then we have also internal previews and internal summaries. So what that does is, just as the name says, it previews the thing that we're about to talk about. In the case of an internal preview, for example, there are a couple points I would like to make here. So that leads your listener into believing that we are going to cover a couple points about whatever we're talking about. And then, of course, we have summaries, which conclude or wrap up or revisit the things that we've just talked about. And in doing this in very brief terms, the example here is, now that I've talked about a couple key points. So both of those things do the job of helping us know where we were and or where we're going. A great way to accomplish both of those things at once is called the restate forecast transition. That is essentially an internal preview. Put them in order. An internal summary followed by an internal preview. So that is going to be really useful for you because you're going to tie those two things together. So now that I've talked about the type of sandwiches you might find at the TikTok diner, that's a summary that's reviewing what we just talked about in the previous main point. Let's wash that down with a selection of their unique milkshakes. That is a kind of witty and clever. That part's not required that it be witty and clever, but it does preview where we're going next. So you'll usually find these restate forecast transitions in between main point 1 and 2 or main point 2 and 3. That's usually the most logical place because we place it between major portions of the speech internally, hence the name. So those are the common types of transitions that we use in speeches. What I want to do now is to hopefully share a video for a speech where we can hear some of these in place. So I'm only going to play a portion of it, and you can at least hear the internal preview. Actually, I'm going to play a different one. I'm going to play the toilet paper one that you already listened to because you're already familiar with it. You'll be able to identify these couple of transitions at work. So I'm going to be able to jump around a little bit.
You can see I brought some items here with me today.
All right, I'm going to jump ahead to hopefully the end of the transition or the end of the introduction.
And 84 billion more paper. How we got.
Okay, so here we go.
My focus today will be on what came before toilet paper, how we got to toilet paper that we recognize today, and where toilet paper is going in the future.
So that, as we talked about before, that is your preview statement that comes at the end of your introduction. All right, let's hear what comes next.
But first, let's take a look at some solutions from a simpler time.
So this is what we would call an internal preview. We are previewing that first point, talking about solutions from an earlier time, I believe he said. So we're going to listen.
You can see I have leaves and sticks.
And of course, we can hear these signposts in the middle.
Use the ancient that came out of the hole in the corner. Most of the time you were using it as toilet paper. Now, MadamTallbot.com tells us Sears and Roebuck came out with paper. Joe moistened wipes that were treated with aloe paper that sell their toilet paper to a hotel such as the Waldorf and winter-free toilet paper. Of Firstly, I'd like to show you where we got, but what do we have to look forward to? going to take
Okay,
you now
sorry,
into the
I'm
future,
having a
the
hard time
backside.
finding that.
So we know where we got toilet paper from. But what do we have to look forward to?
So that is a restate forecast pattern. So we know where it came from. Now, what do we have to look forward to? So I'm not going to play through the rest of the speech to find the others, but you can now hear how these different full sentence previews or transitions can be used in a speech and help the speech sound more formal. One other thing I want you to take a look at in your module 2A, I gave you this sample outline for an informative speech. Now, as I say here, this is when this assignment is a single person's. So this is not a group speech, but it really can be used just as well when you're in a group speech format. So what this includes, and you will see the same stuff appear in your own speech outline template. You'll see these transitions. So you may be wondering, what is this kente cloth? So that is a transition that goes into the first body statement. It is a preview of what's going to be discussed there. You'll see then later on, if I scroll a little further, you will see this internal summary, which reviews the first main point. And then we see a transition, which is a preview of the next main point. So we can see that happening, that internal summary, those internal previews that help us go from one piece to another. All right, I am going to wrap up this portion of today's missed class, but there will be a quiz there that I hope you will, well, I don't hope you will, that I'm asking you to complete before next class so that I know that you understood what we talked about here today with transitions and organization. Thanks. I'll see you guys on Tuesday.